Hey everybody, welcome back to the clinicaltrialsguru.com. Thank you very much, Guru Nation, for watching. So, back by popular demand, Chris Hopper.
Popular demand.
There was some demand.
Like one person.
One person, but that counts. So, what are we doing?
We're answering questions about what to do once you have a study. What's the next step or steps?
And why are we doing this?
Because we receive many questions about this.
From our clients, from people that are not our clients, from people that would like to be our clients,
Of course,
and even from people who would not like to be our clients, but the questions are coming.
Most of these are from clients or other individuals that are new to research.
And these are the best questions, the ones that we keep getting over and over again. And even though we've done videos on this, we're just going to go super in depth on it in this video. We're going to try to keep it under 15 minutes. If it goes over, we're going to have to do a part 2. We're going to have 2.
Okay.
Right?
So you're timing this?
Yeah, I have to upload this.
But are you timing what's 15 minutes?
No. Well, I can. Let's see. Reset. Apple Watch. Okay.
15 minutes.
I got it. So what do we do? What happens?
Okay, so you're a site and you have been awarded a study. What are the next steps? First, of course, you're going to negotiate the contract and budget, right? And you've done many videos on this, correct?
Right. So so by the way, let's backtrack. So everything we're going to talk about comes from once you are awarded a study. So you've already gone through your site selection visit. You've got the approval letter. Have you had your SIV yet? Site initiation visit? No site initiation visit. Okay. Proceed.
So we're going to negotiate the budget and contract. And again, Dan has done many a video on this. So
we have, yeah.
Right. So if you don't want to do it or you're not sure how to do it, reach out. We will happily do it for you. So once that's done, once you've finished negotiating your budget and contract, you're going to receive, or maybe simultaneously, you're going to receive regulatory documents. These are going to include things like 1572, financial disclosure form, protocol signature page, and many other documents, IRB, other documents as well. So you need to complete all of those. And again, if you're uncertain how to do this, this is where we can come in. Anyhow, moving on. So you complete those documents. Those documents you're going to need to make a copy of. And you're either going to keep the originals and send a copy to the sponsor or CRO, or vice versa. And it's usually vice versa. Usually you're going to keep the copies, file those in your regulatory binder, and then you're going to send the originals to either the CRO or sponsor. Before you send the documents, though, you're going to want to make copies of those. You'll make copies of those and email them to your regulatory representative for the CRO or sponsor. And they're going to overlook them to make sure everything is correct.
Now, why do you make copies?
Because should the FDA come out to your site, they're going to want to see your regulatory documents. And you need to have copies of those. They have to be at site to show that you have them, that they've been done. In my opinion, the site should be the one responsible for the originals, from what I've read from the FDA, but it's acceptable, and for whatever reason, the sponsor wants to have the originals.
Okay.
Anyhow, moving on. So you complete your regulatory documents, you send, once they're completed, you email a copy to, again, your regulatory representative. They'll overlook them, and they'll tell you if there's any corrections that need to be made, and if so, you do those. And then once you have approval, you will send most likely the originals to the sponsor or CRO. So at that point, they're going to set up a site initiation visit.
SIV.
Correct. So the monitor will come out to your site and they're going to check to make sure everything is in order. Essentially, the purpose of an SIV is to make certain you're ready to start seeing patients. So to prepare for that, again, you need to file your regulatory documents. You need to prepare, and this is not something you had sent with your original regulatory documents. You're going to need to prepare a delegation of duties log. So what that is it just outlines everybody's responsibility in the trial. So while the PI is responsible for everything in a trial and everything that occurs in a trial, the PI can delegate duties to other individuals, so long as they meet the criteria for doing that responsibility. For example, you cannot delegate a physical exam to a study coordinator who has a high school degree.
Right.
It would have to be an MD.
Someone who's qualified to do
Right, MD,
those tasks.
a PRN, something like that.
Correct.
So they have to meet the qualifications to perform the tasks. And depending on the study, the qualifications can change. For example, in a schizophrenia trial, sometimes it's okay that anybody does one assessment, for example, the PANS, right? Sometimes
Correct.
anybody can do the PANS, but if it's one of the primary endpoints of the trial, usually they're going to want somebody a little better educated to conduct this. As far up as an MD, you have to be an MD to conduct the PANS. Again, it varies from study to study on what the requirements are, so it's up to you to find out what those requirements are for each person delegated to whatever task. And the CRA will overlook your delegation of duties log to make sure that everybody's appropriately
Right.
qualified to do these trials, or at least they're supposed to.
Right.
But it behooves you to make sure that it's accurate initially,
Mm-hmm.
and not rely upon your CRA to catch any mistakes you may have made.
Right, because as we've seen sites that have gone through their SIV, and we'll get into this part right now, and the monitor's supposed to do a whole bunch of things, and maybe they do like 80% of it.
Right, they're not perfect, they're human
Right,
beings.
so we had a client who had a SIV, but the monitor never checked whether they had their source docs ready.
Mhm.
And in most studies, you have to create the source doc, so we'll get into that next.
We
So
will.
how does one go about doing this, Chris?
What, creating source docs?
Yeah.
So you'll have to look over your protocol, be familiar with it, and typically you'll prepare your source documents from the schedule of assessments, schedule of events. And you'll have this table that outlines what activities occur at what visit, and you'll prepare your source documents from that. You can typically gather 80 or more % of what occurs in the study from the schedule of events. However, you want to familiarize yourself with the more detailed explanations of each visit by reading the entire protocol to make sure that everything that you've captured in your source documents are accurate. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So, delegation of duties, right? You're going to prepare that. You're going to file that in your regulatory binder. Am I missing anything else?
Delegation duties, source docs.
Right, you want to prepare your source documents.
You want to make sure that your site has received the study drug,
Correct.
right? You want to make sure you've received the lab kits.
And with your study drug that you've registered everything in the regulatory binder.
Right.
You've logged all the drug and each individual drug number.
In the reg
identification
binder, there will be
Drug
a
log.
drug accountability log, and you got to log those in. And not only that, another thing on your checklist should be make sure somebody at your site, the PIN, whoever's going to be dispensing meds, has IWRS access.
No, good point. And
Right, so many times you don't have it because there's like 12 vendors on average for every trial.
Mhm.
And so you may have received your EKG machine, which is another thing we're going to get into, from one vendor, and you may have received lab kits from another vendor, but then your drug, that comes from yet another vendor, and so
Correct.
you don't get access to all these things at the same time.
And they're all going to have different links and different passwords and everything else. And you also need EDC access.
EDC
And
access.
typically there's going to be training associated with a lot of these things.
And with the EDC access, it's actually helpful if you can get that prior to your SIV, so you can get the training done, but also so you can use the EDC to help you create your source docs. Because whatever is on the EDC,
They expect you to capture.
right, whatever fields are on there, it should be on your source, right? So make sure you have the investigator product, the study drug. Make sure that you start a temperature log from the minute you get it.
Yeah, you have to keep track daily of whatever temperature your drug is at.
Even if you haven't started the study, once drug arrives at your site, you need to,
That day.
that is in your custody now. You need to make sure the temperature is being monitored.
Daily.
Log it in ASAP to the IWRS and fill out your IP accountability log in the regulatory binder. All right? And your monitor's supposed to check these things, but again, God bless their hearts. They're overworked. They've got maybe 5 SIVs that week, and sometimes they'll miss something, right? They're human
Most often
beings.
they'll miss something.
They're humans, right?
Yep.
Okay, so what else?
So you also want to make sure that you have an informed consent form, or at least you have access to the IRB to print one, because usually these things are kept in the cloud, the IRB, and you can print it, but you need to make sure you have an informed consent form.
And that brings up a whole nother thing. IRB approval. Is your site status approved to begin screening?
Yeah, you have to have a letter stating that from the IRB that your site is acceptable to conduct this trial.
And you won't get that through osmosis. You're gonna have to fill out the initial IRB questionnaire.
Which is provided with the initial regulatory packet. But oftentimes, here's another error that it will occur, because again, human beings, they will not include everything you need to do in your initial regulatory packet. I've had this happen a number of times recently.
Right.
Where I have to say, hey, I got everything but my IRB initial submission.
Right.
Get that.
And this is good because someone who doesn't know, they don't receive that. They're like, oh, I guess I don't need that.
Yeah, I did everything, and here you go.
And then you don't want to screen someone if you don't have IRB approval. You're going to
Well,
lose
you're not
the
going to have
study.
consent either, so hopefully that's not the case.
We're dealing with some novices.
This is true,
Right.
right. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have everything completed regulatory-wise, and if for some reason you shouldn't, hopefully when you submit your final regulatory documents, somebody catches it and says to you, hey, well, where's your whatever you're missing? And you'll say, well, I never received that. Hopefully that happens, but there's no guarantee it will.
Okay.
Hopefully when the CRA, if that's passed somehow through the cracks, CRA comes out at the SIV, hopefully they catch it. But even here, that may not happen. So it's best you're aware of everything that needs to be done and you're proactive about getting it done. And if nothing else, even if it is caught at the SIV by your CRA, but now it's going to delay until you can start screening.
Yeah.
Because here's another thing that didn't get done and now it needs to be done before you can start screening.
And a lot of you entrepreneurs that are bootstrapping, what that means is you're delaying your payment.
And time is money.
Time is money. And so what else we're missing? I know the ECG thing, right? So typically sponsors will provide you with an ECG machine for a study. Not always.
About 80% of the time now.
80% of the time. So sometimes you'll be unfortunate and you'll get a study, your first study, where you're going to have to shell out money to buy an ECG machine. They're like $3 to $5 grand. You don't need anything fancy, right? But let's assume the sponsor sent you the ECG machine, right? You're going to have to do a test ECG. And then you got to do a test transmission of that ECG. And you should do this, if not prior to the SIV, then they'll have you do it at the SIV. Again, a good monitor will make sure you do this. A bad one will just leave you alone. Right? Anything else we're missing? We still got 3 more minutes.
Well, we got a ways to go though.
Wow. Okay, so what's next?
Okay, so by SIV, I think we've captured everything that you need to have done. Now at the SIV itself, essentially they're going to ask you the same questions at the SIV or cover the same material that they covered at the SSV, site selection visit. They're going to ask you where you're going to get your patients, how are you going to recruit, it's just kind of the same questions. No worries here though, you're not going to lose the trial with your answers. It's not the site selection visit where you haven't been awarded a trial, where so you can't lose it, they just may not award it to you. At the SIV, it's your trial, you have a contract in place. That doesn't mean they can't take it away from you, so don't do anything really outlandish, right, at the SIV.
Well, I mean, if you say something like, we're not going to screen, we're not going to use informed consents on our subjects.
Right, that's what I'm saying, and don't do anything outlandish.
Don't do anything crazy, but you're not going to lose the study. They're not there to interrogate you during the SIV. They're there hopefully to make sure you have everything you need, because they want you to screen too. I mean, it looks bad on them if you're not screening, so they're going through their checklist to make sure that your site has everything it needs to screen literally the next day.
Hopefully, yes.
Right?
If everything is in order at SIV, you can start screening the next day. But again, they're going to ask you the same questions at the site selection visit. And in addition to that, they're going to make sure you have all the materials you need in order to conduct a trial. Do you have your ICF? Do you have your IRB approval? Do you have drug? Do you have laboratory kits? Do you have laboratory shipping boxes? Just everything that you need to have in order to conduct the trial. Am I missing anything that you need to have? So you need ICF.
Yep.
You need source documents.
Mm-hmm.
You need IP.
Yeah.
You need lab
Lab
kits,
kits.
and your shipping boxes.
IRB approval.
IRB approval. Am I
Hopefully your
missing anything?
delegation log filled out.
Well, that needs to be done before you can see a patient.
Right. Yeah.
So that's it. We can start seeing patients now, right?
Yes,
We
let's
have all
get-
this is all in order.
Let's start seeing patients. Well, there is one more thing. So how are you going to pay the patients, right? Do you have, is it cash?
But they're not going to go over that. CRA is not going to ask you that.
No, but if the patient, if you're going to screen the next
This
day.
is something you need to know how you're going to handle,
Right.
but this isn't going to prevent you from start seeing patients. If you saw a patient the next day, then it's going to dawn on you, hey, I have no cash, I'm going to pay this patient.
Or I have no access to ClinCard, which is a system that sponsors
Sure.
are starting to use now. I mean, you're going to have an angry patient, which
Right.
you might have a screen failure
Right,
because
they
the
might quit
patient's
study.
pissed off, right? So you don't want that.
So there's three ways you can pay a patient. There's like ClinCard. Well, there's more than a few
Which you don't
ways.
need to worry about. If the sponsor chooses a vendor like that, it's just going to be like any other vendor. They're going to have you use it. You don't need to go out and find one yourself. You know, we prefer cash or check.
Mhm.
But if the sponsor wants us to
You
use
use
a vendor, they'll choose it for you. You don't need to do anything. Okay?
More EDC, or not EDC, but more training involved with that as well.
Mhm.
Another password required.
And one more thing, since we're still on the pre-SIB, chances are your site does not have a local IRB, all right? Unless you're a hospital or a university, you don't have a local IRB, which means you're going to use a central IRB.
Correct.
You don't have to do anything to go looking for an IRB. The sponsor already chose one, and if you're using a central IRB, they're going to let you know, but in the emails they'll try to trick you, and not try, but you might get confused because the sponsor will write in the email with the initial regulatory package, for sites using central IRBs, fill out this form, for sites using local IRBs, fill out your own forms. Don't get confused, you're probably using a central IRB.
Unless
So-
you're an academic or hospital.
Unless you're an academic or hospital, so central IRB, okay? Use the forms they give you. If they don't give you forms, like Chris said, you need to
Request
call the
them.
IRB or call the monitor, call everybody, get the forms.
Yeah. And then back to the payment. So maybe a sponsor will provide you with ClinCard. If that's not the case, you can get your own rechargeable cards if you prefer. They sell them at Walmart, I believe. You can go there, you can get those, or cash or check.
Mhm.
So there's a number of ways you can pay the patients. Like Dan said, I prefer cash. But check works just as well, just cash is a little quicker. And a lot of patients tend to change the dollar amount on checks too.
Yeah,
Kind of
nice.
fraud.
Acid wash going on. So, okay, so what's next?
Okay, so get in a hurry.
Well, we're at 17 minutes.
Yeah, I told you
I
it's a
don't
little
mind.
longer.
I don't mind.
5 more minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so you're ready to start seeing patients. You've been given approval. So the next day you screen a patient. So the first thing you do when the patient comes in is
Consent form.
Yeah, informed
And that
consent.
includes all the forms, not just the consent form. If there's a genetic consent form, they need to either accept or decline that.
yeah, all
Right.
informed consent forms need to be
HIPAA
completed.
form, authorization to release medical records, any state forms required for research, like in California, they have the California Bill of Rights, right? Know these things.
Mhm. And make sure you complete them according to both what the IRB wants and your SOPs outline. They have to be completed in a fashion that accomplishes what both entities want, your SOPs and the IRB.
Yeah, if you're not following your own SOPs and you get audited, they're gonna say, well, your SOPs say one thing, you're saying another thing, now let's go look at everything your SOPs say, because you're probably not following any of it.
Correct.
Right.
So make sure and do it in accordance with both the IRB, their outline,
Mhm.
and your SOPs.
Alright, so consent first, rule number 1, consent.
Yep. So, and the consent process is outlined in all GCP training, so just follow that on the procedures for consenting a patient. So then you're ready to actually start seeing the patient. conducting clinical research. You'll use your source documents, any assessments that have been provided by the sponsor. Make sure you follow the schedule of events. So whatever it says in the screening visit needs to occur.
That is like the cliff notes to any protocol, is the schedule of assessment. So it's going to break down every visit. It's going to show you every single procedure that needs to be done for that visit, and you just make sure you do it. And there's some nuances. You got to know the order. You got to know if the result is this.
So what he means by order is if every once in a while on a trial they want things done in a specific order. You do the vitals first, then you do a physical exam, then you do these assessments in this order. That's what Dan means by order. We're talking to novices here. So.
Of course, yeah, no, thank you. So yeah, in order, and so that's where you got to know the intricacies of the protocol. But if I go to your site today and you have a screening visit, I don't care about the protocol. I'm looking at the schedule of assessments, and I'm looking at your source doc. Hopefully you have the visit one source doc done. So then I'll just go through
No,
and
it
make
needs
sure
to be done. Don't start seeing a patient until
that's done.
Until your source documents
We
are ready.
have heard about sites that are doing visits, completing visits without writing anything down.
Yeah, we just heard about this today.
Today. So, schedule of assessment is very important, but of course you get another protocol too.
So yeah, you definitely have to have everything captured on paper. When you do a study visit, it has to be captured on paper. You just can't sit down at your EDC website and capture all the information there. It has to be captured on paper first.
Yes.
And you need to have your source documents prepared prior to seeing the patient. Hopefully you don't really need to look over your schedule of events. You'll just go by what's on the source documents. If they were prepared correctly, they will already have captured what's on the schedule of assessments.
Okay. So what's next after consent?
Okay, so you see the patient, you conduct the trial, you do everything according to the protocol, you finish your assessment, and then you're going to need to look at when they're next, or you finish the visit, and you'll have conducted everything that needs to be done for the screening visit, and you'll follow protocol again on when you will see them next.
Very true, unless during one of the procedures the subject screen failed.
Sure.
Then you don't even need to do the rest of the procedures.
Yeah, once they screen
if
failure,
they
they're
screen
done.
failed for anything, let's say you got an ECG result, and that's the third thing you have to do on that screening visit of 20 things, right? ECG is abnormal, PI says no, this is
screen failed.
screen failed, so you don't need to finish the visit. Screen fail the subject, go on the IVRS or IWRS, follow the procedures for your particular study for how to screen fail, write a note to file, subject screen failed
for what reason?
Inclusion or exclusion criteria number whatever, and then you're done.
And the inclusion and exclusion criteria is part of your screening source, so it'll tell you everything that the subject needs to meet or not meet in order to qualify for the trial.
And again, if you need help with this, we work with sites all the time, experienced, novice sites, whatever the case may be, we'll create the source documents for you.
Mm-hmm. So inclusion and exclusion criteria, part of the source, part of the screening source. You need to print it out, you have it prepared, it needs to be covered and completed. All yeses on the inclusion, all no's on the exclusion.
That's right.
If that's the case, then you can schedule them for their next visit, according to protocol.
Now, typically, you have to wait for lab results to come back before you'll know for sure whether they qualify.
Right. So
labs, you send it to the central lab. There's lab manuals. You'll receive all these things. You process the labs, and once you draw the blood, you go spin the tubes, follow your lab manual, ship the samples out. Probably within 2 business days or 3 business days. Within a week at the most, you should receive the lab results back.
Yeah.
That will let you know whether you can screen fail the patient or randomize the patient.
So it will give guidelines within the inclusion and exclusion criteria, typically exclusion, on what lab values this patient cannot exceed or have less than. Mm-hmm. Maybe liver values or depending on the trial, it varies from trial to trial. And their lab values have to be within the guidelines of the exclusion criteria in order to qualify.
Okay, so, and of course your PI needs to have oversight. So even if the subject screen fail have the PI see the patient, even if it's for 5 minutes, just to write a quick progress note. Subject came in, the ECG results were abnormal or normal. It's good to have investigator footprint.
Very, I agree with what Dan's saying, but minimally, you need to have, so for, let's say for lab values, the patient screen fails for lab values, get the lab values back and something's well out of range, so they screen failed for that reason. You need to contact the patient and tell them that that's why they screen failed and they need to follow their primary.
Mm-hmm. Follow. There you go, thank you. So you have to document that too. Remember, if you don't document it, it didn't happen. So good clinical practice says if a patient screen failed due to any abnormal health result or kind of underlying medical condition, you're not the diagnosing doctor, you're not going to get into that, but you refer them to their doctor, all right? And you got to document that.
That you
Patient
told
was
them to
referred to their primary care, they were given a copy of their lab results or their ECG results or whatever it is, and they're to be followed up, right? If you do that, that's good clinical practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a trick here. So if a subject screen fails, usually they have to come in fasting, right? If a subject doesn't come in fasting, because there's argument, well, you can't ask a subject to come in fasting unless they sign the consent form. So sometimes
I think they've gotten away from that. I don't think it's required anymore to come in fasting.
For most labs.
Mm-hmm. It's just, you may have an odd lab value if that's the case. Patient ate a half an hour before coming in.
Okay. But if there is a fasting requirement and they didn't come in fasting, you draw the blood anyways. When the results come back, the glucose will probably be abnormal, it'll be high. You can write a note to file, subject was not fasting.
Sure.
Right? So it doesn't mean you got to screen fail the patient. Use common sense.
Yes, but if, for example, they come back and their labs come back and they're above the exclusion criteria glucose level, you might have to have a conversation with the medical monitor in order to allow them to continue.
Or do repeat tests.
Yeah, but it still requires a conversation.
Okay, so
With the medical
document
monitor.
every conversation you have with your monitor, medical monitor, just document everything, right? Don't just have a phone call with the medical monitor
Email's best.
and then he or she told you, yeah, you can do that, and then you do it, and then later your monitor says, why'd you do that?
Yeah, email's best.
Oh, because I talked to my medical monitor. Well, how do I know that? So email's best, but if you have a phone call, immediately when you're done, quick note to file. On this date, I talked to medical monitor, put that in there, that way when the CRA looks at it, they know what's going on.
But
Or the FDA looks at it.
Email's best because you will have both sides of the conversation.
Yeah, you'll have the thread, right?
Yeah, you'll have their response as well as yours.
But some sites are old school. Actually, I'm old school too. When it comes to medical monitors, I would call them.
You know what I do? I call them and then I ask them, can we have an email conversation, just what we just spoke of here.
Ah, all right.
I've done that a number of times.
That's good too. So whatever works for you. Okay, what's next? Or are we done?
I think we're done. You
Good,
get
'cause I'm
past
hungry.
you get past screening. The rest of the study's relatively easy, really.
We'll do one later on how to randomize, but
Yeah.
all right. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
It was great. Thank you, Guru Nation, for watching. Let us know if you have questions, and of course, if you need our help getting studies, negotiating budgets, creating your SOPs, creating your source docs, training you want to be one of our clients? Good news.
We're accepting?
All of this. We're accepting. Now accepting applications. We do all this for you and more for one monthly retainer every month. There's no hidden fees, no percentages, and we try to keep costs down because it's economies of scale. We leverage what we have, we leverage our infrastructure and our team to be able to provide affordable services for you guys and gals because you know what? This is something I would have paid for
Sure.
back in 2005, 6, 7, and 8
Sure.
when I was figuring things out on my own as well.
Mhm.
All right? Dan and Chris from theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Take care.